It is 7:30. Good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, it's interesting to talk about this particular subject at the moment because, obviously, there is such a lot of news about the war. And what do you believe coming from where at the moment? How do you get your news? Well, thankfully, you're doing the sensible thing and watching us. But a lot of people get their news in very different ways. And misinformation has spread like madfire online following the Hamas attack on Israel 2 weeks ago now. 2 weeks. And, of course, both sides continue to battle away and both sides have their point of view.
Well, many social media users are sharing misleading or baseless claims. Some of them will be doing it deliberately. Some won't necessarily know that what they're sharing isn't right, including miscaptioned imagery, altered documents. And, of course, it all changes public perception, but it may be absolute nonsense.
So we're joined by broadcaster, lawyer and futurist Andrew Eborn, who knows all about this sort of thing. And it is particularly pertinent at the moment to be looking at this.
Oh, absolutely. There's lots of horrendous images which are coming out, which are true images. But in amongst all of that, there's all sorts of fake images, from computer-generated images to wrongly attributed, wrongly dates and so on and so forth. And they always say that the first casualty in war is the truth. And a lie will go halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on, is what they say. And what I thought is, I've been trawling every single day. There are lots of these different videos, and there are literally millions. There were 50 million after the first weekend videos about the conflict. And I've got a few examples which I've pulled up. I mean, the first one is, it said, breaking: Hamas militants started a new airstrike on parts of Israel. And this was fake. And I think we've got the video, which I can show you here. But a lot of this sort of stuff, you see these rockets being fired into the air. They've also got basically helicopters being shot out of the sky, and it all looks terribly realistic.
I was going to say, well, this footage in itself could be real.
Absolutely, and this is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what's fake. It's actually from and I basically looked back at where it could have come from, and it actually came from a computer game, can you believe?
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's a computer game, and it's what it is. It's called Armour 3 by a Czech company called Bohemia Interactive. So Bohemia Interactive produced this, and so often you're going to find this imagery. It's long advanced since the days of Pong, when you used to get the individual pixels. It is now incredibly realistic, and I did the very first computer game.
So that's legitimate video.
Yes.
Of a game, and so that's why it looks very impressive and frightening. But has it been miscaptioned?
Oh, well, totally, because they said that this is the attack by Gaza, by Hamas, against Israel. And so what's happened is, and they've used a lot of this, they've had this sort of stuff. So when you look at this, and that was the sort of reports, they said, look, this is what's going on at the moment, it's all horrendous. And you've got also similar images, helicopters being shot out of the sky. And what's happening now, game footage is so realistic. You can get completely confused on that sort of stuff. And gamers, what they do, they basically record their footage, and that's how you can tell. Just check the date, check who's actually posted it, and so on and so forth. We've also had another example of what's happened, where you've got sort of fireworks going on in the sky. I think we've got that sort of video as well, which we can show you. Here we go. So if you have a look at this sort of thing, which is, again, fake news, what this was not Gaza at all, but it got 1.2 million views, and it's a video from 2020, when an Algerian football club won the league. Can you believe it? And again, people have used that purposed video.
And what are they saying? That it's Gaza?
They're saying it's Gaza. Saying that, exactly. They're sort of turning around and saying, oh, they're celebrating this sort of stuff. So all of this is being peddled. And the problem is people don't check what happens. And so you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth.
You see, this is the issue. And I think a lot of it is a youth issue, is it? Because, I'm not quite 50 yet, and I would not go onto social media for news. But if young people view it all differently, and they just seem to accept what they're shown.
Yeah, well, Mark Twain originally said, if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you read it, you're misinformed. Yeah. Well, never has it been more true. We're living in a very diseased information age. And I think what happens, the last time I talked to you about children in cages, and it turned out that wasn't true footage at all. But there's another horrendous example, and which we've got at the moment, which I think we can show you. And this was originally sort of captioned that it There was a kidnapped Jewish girl. She was taken to Gaza, and the caption reads, if you look at this, a lost girl, and she's tiny. And when I first saw this, the hairs on my arm stood up, because it looks absolutely horrendous. And they say, look, this is what we're fighting against. So people have posted that. They've been viewed more than 1 million times. And what happened, and again, I checked all of this, it's basically, it's not that at all. It was actually footage from the 8th of August, before the conflict even started. And there's no evidence that she'd been kidnapped at all, no evidence that it's a terrorist and so on and so forth. But it's deliberately playing on the heartstrings in the same way as the caged children.
Why would people do this?
Well, I tell you exactly that. It's propaganda, isn't it? You're feeding the lies to stir up basically the absolute hatred, if you like, for the other side. That is what's happening with propaganda and the enemy. And you work on that sort of basis. And they also, but it doesn't just work about the conflict. They try and bring in other people as well. So there's a claim that a video shows Qatar's emir, who's threatening to cut off the world's natural gas. I looked that out. I think we've got that one as well. You can see this.
So it's a big conference.
This is a big conference. And what they say...
Look, emir is standing, announcing something at the podium.
And what they basically said is that he's announced that he's going to stop the gas supply, the world's natural gas supply, if Israel doesn't stop bombing Gaza. Well, the fact of the matter is that's complete false, because this particular video comes from the Doha Forum in 2017. And again, what's happening, they're trying to bring in all these third parties and so on and so forth. And you've had a similar thing with Ukraine. They're turning around and saying Ukraine is supplying weapons to Gaza, therefore you shouldn't be supporting Ukraine. So it's working on that sort of principle.
All right, so look, on the basis that people aren't going to do what you've done and do sort of
trace it back,
traces and all the rest of it. But if you can do it, the tech companies can do it.
Absolutely.
So why aren't they taking steps?
And they should do. And there are tools there. Last time I talked about this reverse image searches, which is really simple. So what you can do in Google, try it, everybody try it at home, take a picture, a screen grab or something, and put it into Google image search. And it will tell you where that image first appeared. I would also say to everybody, question everything. Because the reality is we're drowning in a sea of misinformation.
So the video there, the video clip we saw of the little tiny girl who you could look at that and say this is a refugee, in, somebody who's lost their parents in a recent bombing attack, and your sympathy immediately goes out because she looks like a lost little girl. You can put that image, can you?
Yes.
Into what did you say?
So it's Google image search.
Google image search.
So you take a screen grab of that, and it will tell you where that video first appeared.
Oh, that's
that could be her uncle.
And it probably was. It probably was. There was no evidence. The other thing, there are lots of fact-checking things. What I love about this is that it feels as though it's a real service. And it's depressing waking up to the news every day. And there are horrendous real images coming out.
Of course.
What we need to do is to stop the misinformation and so on and so forth. So it feels like a public service thing. I say every day I wake up and look at this sort of stuff, look at the videos, try and fact-check it. And if you go back on a sort of lighter note, you might remember we got the picture of the Pope. Do you remember that happened on the AI thing? I sent that to our production people as well.
I've never seen that.
That's what I thought. We always spoke about it, so I thought I'd send it in today. So this was...
Just if you're listening on the radio, this is the Pope, Francis, standing there in a great big white puffer jacket. He almost looks like an astronaut.
Oh, he does. It's glorious. And I always say the devil wears Prada, but the Pope prefers a buffer. So you work on that sort of basis. But it was AI-generated. And some of the clues as to how you can work that out, they're not very good on AI-generated images about things like fingers and so on and so forth. But we've also got another example with Trump being arrested. Now, it's not too far from the truth, but this was a couple of the photos, so we can just show those photos as well. So this is Trump. So you have a look here. Again, it's fake. I would emphasise that. But you've got Trump in the middle. But you can see that some of the faces are a bit blurry. His hair is a little bit blurry. So what's happening is the fake image is not perfect yet. It will get better.
Yes.
And we've got another one as well of Trump as well. You can have a look.
I mean, that was Trump being manhandled by police. By the look of it.
It looks like...
And here he is again.
And here he is again being arrested. But you can tell that's fake because if you look at the neck, for example, so there are tiny details.
The lighting's all wrong, isn't it?
The lighting's all wrong as well. So question, if you have a look at that sort of sign, what's interesting, there are different ways that AI is being used. Artificial intelligence can be used to... I've just been down in Cannes at the TV festival where I was presenting the drama awards I have, I thank you. But we were talking about artificial intelligence, which is front and centre of the actors' strike, front and centre of the writers' strike, because it can recreate anything. And the worrying thing is, the worst thing is audio. because audio is almost impossible to tell what could have happened. And there's all sorts of things which are elections being rigged. You've had leaders of all sides of the parties work on that basis. Images, as I say, in videos, you can tell, look for little discrepancies. And every time that we do this, we try and give you extra tips and examples.
Lovely stuff. Andrew, we've got to leave it there, but good to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Fascinating but frightening.
It is terrifying, actually.